Oh, team, welcome back.
Hi.
It's been so long since we've seen you. We missed you.
It's
This is Eye on the Storm. This is your weekly show where we talk about Heroes of the Storm, community, gameplay, strategy, and all things related to Heroes of the Storm. I'm Anna Prosser Robinson, and that's my co-host Gillyweed, who actually has my name on top of her. Just kidding. Hold on.
just
Gillyweed.
kidding. I'm Anna
Yeah.
Prosser Robinson.
Talk
That's
about
part of our
yourself.
New Year charm, guys. Is we have
Do-do-do-do.
officially switched roles.
Dude. Yeah, you didn't know I actually just got tons of plastic surgery and I look a little different this year.
Well, while we get things set up, we can let you know a little bit about this show. If this is the first time you're watching, welcome. We're so excited that you're here. This is Eye on the Storm, where we talk about Heroes of the Storm, Blizzard's hero brawler game. And it started out with us wanting to learn more about the game so that we could eventually cast it. Now we both love to cast the game, but we still have this show, and we bring on different guests and talk about different aspects of the game. And this week's going to be a little bit different, and we'll explain why really soon. But what we generally do is we bring on a guest, we talk about things that are happening in the community or the game. We also try to highlight different heroes and builds for them too, so that you can learn along with us too. And we do that in a in-game spotlight where we play a game with some community members. And then finally, we close it out with spotlighting some things that are happening throughout the community that are really fun that you should check out. And throughout, we have a hashtag you can use on Twitter, Storm Show, where you can ask us any questions as well as in the chat.
Indeed, and don't forget we are on Misscliks, which is an online community and live streaming channel that is built to provide support and exposure for women role models in geek and gaming culture, because we want to uplift gamers everywhere. So we try to have a positive, fun time, and you guys are always really great about doing that in the chat. So please keep that up. And thanks to Misscliks for hosting us. But the most exciting thing about this episode is that we do have a guest from TGNSquadron. Between our faces is TheHengest. How you doing, buddy?
Hello, I'm great. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Of course. How are your holidays?
Oh, I'm more of a New Year's kind of guy. I'm not big on Christmas. I think New Year's is like the only holiday worth celebrating, and so I always have a
Really?
good time on holidays.
How come?
Yeah, New Year's, just because it's significant. It resembles one full revolution around the sun, and I think that's the only thing of like scientific significance, at least as federal holidays go. So I'm big on that.
I've never heard anyone say the words "I'm not big on Christmas" before. I don't.
I'm not. It's so commercialized. I mean, apologies to anyone who loves Christmas. I love Christmas too, but only from a family time standpoint.
What about you,
Yeah.
Gillyweed? How are your holidays?
Holidays were good. Apparently, we have some whirring sounds happening.
Whirring?
I'm not sure who it is. Do you hear?
It sometimes becomes my mic that makes
I'm worried that it
humming.
might be mine too, because I don't really hear it. So I was gonna check, but
Well,
I don't
I
hear
don't
it.
hear it, so
Oh, okay.
here, we'll test it. This is the beauty of live broadcast. All right, chat.
Oh, okay. Two people say they hear nothing.
All right. Well,
yeah, I think
maybe
you're good,
maybe
man.
it's in your head.
Oh, I'm sorry, Zyra and SC2. We are not sure where that sound's coming from.
Look behind you.
Hope it gets better.
Watch out!
Duck. Anyways, yes, holidays were really good. I went to Kansas to visit my family, and can you hear that clicking sound, or is it good from me? It's somebody playing Heroes very loudly.
I don't hear it.
Okay, good.
My husband is also playing PS4, so any loud noises of other video games, just let us know and we'll yell at our husbands.
Me too. I'll yell at my husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Hengest. We really appreciate you joining in on
It's
that.
important.
Oh, speaking of, well, not speaking of that, but look at my shirt. Yes, Eye on the Storm. Woo!
Yeah.
How were your holidays, Anna?
Well, Jeff and I both have what you would call highly blended families. And so we went to the Pacific Northwest to visit them, but we have like 5 different houses to go to during the holidays. So it was very nice to see everybody, and the holidays were really good. But we both, like, as we were driving back from there, we were like, we kind of forgot to get in the holiday spirit because we were so like do place to place. So maybe next year we'll try to have a little more calming time. But actually on New Year's, total side tangent, but the Aurora Borealis was visible in the Pacific Northwest on New Year's Eve, which
Did you see it?
never happens. And it's on my bucket list to see it. So I was like, I am obligated in this year of Anna to go see the Aurora Borealis that has been brought to me by the Earth. And then we were so tired that instead I laid in bed with Jeff's mom and watched raunchy period dramas, and Jeff played Fallout until he fell asleep at 9. And I tried to wake him up for a New Year's kiss, and he was like, okay, whatever. We went to bed. So, adulting. It's great.
Yeah.
So, anyways, holidays were great. We hope you enjoyed our holiday show matches. We've kind of made a tradition of that, of just doing trolley show matches, and we did have Trolls Giving and Trolladays this year again. So let us know what you thought of those, and if you missed them, they are on YouTube. They're just the play session segment of our show, just a little show match. So do check those out and let us know what you thought. But we will get back into the swing of things now. But this is kind of a slow period for Heroes. So what we decided to do was think about other things that you might be interested in doing with Heroes, and a lot of the questions that we get from you guys are, how can I make my stream really good? How can I become a Heroes content creator? I would like to be a streamer. What does that mean? Those kinds of things. So we brought Hengest on to talk from the perspective of somebody who is involved in very successful Heroes content creation, to talk about what it is like to be an online personality and what it takes to become a Heroes content creator. So Hengest, could you tell people a little bit about your background and how you came to have the job that you have right now?
Sure. So, like most people who make gaming content full-time, they started as independent YouTubers, at least in my experience. And so I was no exception. I think it's been almost 5 years now. Jeez. But I started out covering, playing World of Warcraft and making gaming videos about that. And I'm actually one of the original 10 TGN partners. I don't know if you guys know what TGN is. It's a gaming network on YouTube. And I'm the oldest surviving member of the original brand. So
wow,
we started a World of Warcraft channel back in the day that was basically TGNSquadron around World of Warcraft. And then from there, we fragmented into the TGN Central channel, which is just a channel dedicated to the gaming industry at large. And then we had the successful Squadron series, which then became its own channel. So, and in between, there was a few other channels that I would consider mildly successful. But yeah, it's been a long journey for me. And it is, I guess you could say I'm pretty well versed in the business side of content creation and new media. Never really had a giant following personally, but I've been a part of a lot of, brand creation that has resulted in a wide sphere of influence. So yeah, that's my background. Yeah.
It is interesting to talk about like the business side and how often people kind of forget how important that is to becoming very successful as a content creator online. So yeah. What does that mean? Like, what is your specialty in terms of the business side?
Well, I kind of just learned how to create content really well first. I'm self-taught editor. I always considered myself to have above average speaking ability, and then enjoyed speaking to an audience. So I had those, creation skills. And then I just became more interested in why it is psychologically that people are so interested in watching one another play games, and the creation of this new media platform, which is predominantly YouTube, and more recently we have Twitch. And the whole business of it, how it goes round really interested me. But I still try to, do half and half here and there. I still like to make content, and I still like to run the back end, which these days for me consists primarily of finding talent, mentoring them in a sort of way, and then coming up with strategies for how to grow destinations, particularly on YouTube, through use of SEO, which is search engine optimization, and trend tapping, covering the right thing at the right time, and just learning how web traffic works. It's quite an enigma, and still I'm trying to figure it out. But yeah, I do a lot of the back end research type of things.
Yeah, SEO is super scientific.
It is. Well, the way I like to look at it is it's basically an analysis of the human psychology on a gigantic scale, right? They call it the World Wide Web. It's a representation of humanity and what they do in computers. And so really what you're doing when you analyze web traffic is analyze what people are thinking about, what they're searching for, and what they're watching, and on a planetary scale. So that is very interesting for me, and that's why I decided to pursue more of the back end. But like I said, I try to keep a balance.
What's your background? Is it something in new media or new media science? Because it sounds like that really thrills you.
I dropped out of school to build TGN, so I don't
Wow.
actually have even an associate's degree.
Huh.
And I don't regret it. I dropped out of school during the recession where I didn't know what to do, and I wasn't sure that going to school at that time was a good use of my time, like I said, about 5 years ago. And some people do that. Some people drop out and they just decide to work on a startup instead. I got lucky. The startup that I worked on nonstop became successful, and it went through a series of acquisitions, which resulted in a lot of the corporate ladder type of stuff. But I don't regret. I don't regret it for a minute, and I've learned a ton just building these. I consider them startups. I consider the TGNSquadron and even TGN to a certain degree to be a startup, and it really just is entrepreneurialism at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, oh, go ahead, Anna.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to ask, what about, you talked about when Squadron was first started, but how was it in the early stages versus what is it like now?
Sure. So, man, I don't even know how long it was started in 2011, and it was basically just a set of personalities that were on the TGN channel that were friends, liked to play games together, and so it kind of resulted in us just playing cooperative games together, and then see what it is that stuck. And at that time, it was League of Legends. So we had a pretty sizable League of Legends following when we first started on the main TGN channel. And then we decided to change up some strategies there, and we went on to make a separate League of Legends channel. It's actually still active, I think. It might be privated, TGN League of Legends. And then, we gained a lot of experience in covering MOBA games and what it is that the MOBA player enjoys and what it is that they find thrilling about that genre. And so you could say that we were primed and ready to cover Heroes of the Storm, almost 2 years ago now, when we got access to the tech alpha.
Isn't that weird that it was almost 2 years ago now?
Well, a lot of people say a lot of the issue with Heroes in the hype phase is that it was in testing phase for too long. And so we were making content in the tech alpha for like almost a year, right? And so it was like, oh my gosh, I want access to this game. And then you make that person wait for so long. It's like, okay, it's been too long. My hype has kind of died down for this game. But we never stopped covering the game. And we have a very loyal following on the Squadron. We've managed to reach a big portion of the Heroes community, and we just decided to roll with it. So back in May of last year, we decided to create the Squadron channel and dedicate that to the original series, which was just a collaborative group of people that do cooperative gameplay videos together. Yeah.
That's awesome. So I'm really interested to hear, you keep referencing how you've kind of like learned psychologically what people enjoy watching in video games. And we had kind of wanted to talk to you in two different areas because we're live streaming on Twitch, obviously, and you do a lot of content on YouTube as well. And I know there's a lot of differences between what you might want to watch on either of those. But is there any, before we kind of get into the specifics of either of those, is there any constant that you've learned that like this is what makes a video game piece of content very entertaining?
Right. So for me, gaming has always been a very social experience. I grew up with console games, like I'm sure a lot of the people watching this right now, and it's always been very interactive. It's like a friend-making tool. It's a way you can kind of just chill with your buddies and converse. And then there's the other side of it, which is gaming as a competitive activity. Both are entertaining, but they're two very polar opposites in a lot of ways. In one case, you might find someone streaming something like Heroes and just doing it, really playing at the highest level, right? They're aspiring esports players, or they're training for a tournament, what have you. And so that brings in a lot of people who are very interested in just being the best. It's the competitive drive in them. And to them, that's entertaining. A lot of people get a ton of fun out of playing games to the best of their ability. And then there's the other side, which is I'm more here for the experience of hanging out with my friends. And that's a lot of what live streaming and Let's Play has been traditionally, is just feeling like you're playing the game with the host, from the perspective of being next to that person, or at least in a conversation with that person, even if you're not. And that is ultimately a social experience, and that's an innate need that every human has. But more so what I'm describing, that element, that side of gaming is more so dependent on personality. So if you're not the sort of person that enjoys being in front of a crowd or enjoys being the center of attention, If you're not enjoying that, then chances are your viewers aren't either. And so it is ultimately comes down to me as a social experience. Even if you're just talking to yourself on the microphone, you're doing it full knowing that there's a bunch of people listening to you. And so it's just the ability to interact with a group of people and be the center of attention, really. I mean, in as selfless a way as possible. At least I try to do it that way. Yeah.
Well, so when it comes to streaming, what are then some things that you think, maybe some tips for people who want to get into hero streaming that would make it more entertaining from the outset?
Yeah, I think I kind of just touched on that. And that is that if you do not enjoy, let's take stand-up comedy, for example, right? Some people, just the idea, the prospect of being on stage in front of a crowd of people that are either going to laugh at you or laugh with you, some people find that a nerve-wracking experience. So if you can imagine being in a stand-up comedy, being fully prepared with material, does that excite you or does that scare you? If it scares you, chances are live streaming isn't right for you. But if it excites you, it means you love to be on stage and you love to be the center of attention. I know both of you girls are like that. Not in a bad way. And Anna is just natural on stage. So if you're that sort of person, you don't necessarily have to be extroverted. You just have to know how to be able to flip this switch between behaving in front of an audience and also being able to behave not in front of an audience. So in the case of live streaming, that's either on camera or off camera. So you have to first make sure that live streaming is right for you. It's something that interests you and it's something that excites you. And ultimately after that, it just becomes, are you having fun? Better yet, are you having fun with friends? And if you are, like I said, chances are the viewer is too. The rest of it, building an audience and growing stream over stream and having the impressions that you want or that you need, most of that comes down to strategy, timing, and luck. There's an element of luck there as well. So you do have to have done the research, have the cognition to understand web traffic, like I was describing earlier, to even just land an audience in the first place. You have to be there at the right time.
You were talking about the different ways that you could be entertaining, one being just being very, very good at a video game. Now, I'm just going to assume, considering that like the top 0.2% of people are actually like esports worthy players,
or less than that,
right? So I'm gonna assume that we're more on the like, we like to hang out, be personalities, hang out with our friends side. So when we're talking about that, the unique thing about live streaming that's maybe different from something like a post-produced video on YouTube is that you really are kind of like sitting on the couch playing with your friends, and you can have the chat give you live feedback and talk to you in chat. As someone who has done both post-produced video and live streaming, do you have any tips on how to utilize that live feature?
Yeah, so what sort of content is better suited for live stream versus VOD?
Yeah, and how to really take advantage of it, because you may see some people who don't talk to chat a whole bunch, or maybe don't use it because they're focused on the game, or you might see people who spend more time talking to their chat than playing the game. Where is that happy medium in terms of like taking advantage of being live?
Right. So the esports guys are kind of exempt from this explanation because they do tend to be top streamers, especially on a gaming specific website like Twitch, for example. But if you don't want to go down that path, what sort of content is better suited for live stream versus VOD? Personally, and I think the data shows this as well. When YouTube, when gaming on YouTube first became a thing, and you first started to see people, do it for a living and making actually good money doing it, live Let's Play was really the go-to format. It was the format where you just sit down and watch somebody play a game, experience the story of that game or not, and just experience the personality of that person. Nowadays, Let's Playing has more become the live stream domain. It's really just happened in the past couple of years or so. It's been quite a miraculous transformation. It started with Justin TV, which then obviously became Twitch, and now YouTube Gaming just now rolling out. Whereas the Let's Play experience is the long form sort of content. It's the more casual, I'm going to pace myself. I'm not going to exert all my energy in a half an hour recording. I'm instead going to do maybe like 4, 6, even 8 all day time commitments where you're just sitting down, you're chilling with the audience. And for me, if you're not the sort of person that likes to talk to the chat, perhaps you're better suited for VOD, because when people show up to a live stream, a lot of what they do that for is to interact with the personality and feel like they're having a conversation, and in many cases they do. Though unless you're really popular, it's tough to have like an ongoing conversation with somebody just because there's so much chat activity. And then I kind of touched on it already, but the VOD is definitely the short form. You know, the traditional YouTube video is something that's more intense, easily digestible. You watch it in between a meeting or right before you go to school while you're having a snack. It's just something that you're looking to view and not spend a whole lot of time doing it. You know what I mean? It's just nice, easy, digestible, and widely appealing. That's definitely the sort of content you want to stick on VOD. But content that's about a personality and is more long form is definitely better for live stream these days. And it's been a tough lesson learned. You know, a lot of people still trying to do the whole let's play in VOD format, and it's just not as effective as live stream these days.
Yeah, you want that immediate interaction.
Yeah.
We have a question from the chat from Awake916 that says, would you have any tips for someone trying to start a stream without friends or a group to play with? So we touched on making sure that you have the right, personality for it, and that you're being, willing to interact with your chat, but maybe other types of tips if they know that they want to meet both of those criteria and they're ready to get their stream started. Maybe when it comes to tech or amount of time generally for those streams, any tips that you would have for somebody starting out?
Sure. Technology is always a big component, but a lot of people tend to give it more priority than is necessary. It's the same with any entrepreneurial endeavor, and that is timing. The biggest problem now, because this is a very popular activity, I mean, who doesn't want to play video games for a living, is discoverability, right? There's so many people doing what I'm doing. How do I get noticed? And a lot of people host very successful, far more successful than our streams, solo streams where there's just a one-man show and they just do it themselves. But if you ask that person, how did you get started? Chances are they have an origin story that includes hitting a trend at the right time. So whether it was that you just checked out DayZ when it first came out, and all of a sudden, this game explodes, and you've been streaming it for the past couple of days because you wanted to, and you've got this fat audience there. Those are people that have discovered you. And now, if they're interested in your personality enough to have stuck around, they're a recurring viewer. They're somebody that's no longer just interested in DayZ. They're interested in who you are. But you still need that catalyst in the beginning to be discovered. And once again, that comes down to doing your homework, doing the research. What is an upcoming trend in the gaming industry? There's no way of knowing for certain. Big companies pay specialists a lot of money to research trends and predict upcoming trends. And to a certain extent, that's what my job entails as well. It comes down to taking risks. It is an entrepreneurial activity, and you have to be willing to put elements of your life on hold to give it the amount of effort that is necessary to really give it a chance and see if it works out for you. But it does require research and a degree of chance or luck or whatever you want to call it, just timing.
So when you talk about discoverability, are there any, like, if somebody is going, I'm so unfamiliar with how to find out trends or how to put myself out there on the internet, what are some starting points, some tips that you could give them for that?
Just play games. More importantly, study the recent historical timeline of the gaming industry, right? So what has become popular recently? The most recent thing I can think of that kind of blew up as a trend was Rocket League, right? Became really popular almost overnight. So, okay, what is it about Rocket League that was so enticing to so many people? Was it the distribution platform? Was it the game development? What exactly was it? Chances are it's probably a combination of things. So Rocket League is based on a universal sport known as soccer or football, depending on where you're from, which is globally renowned. There's the World Cup, for God's sakes. Everybody understands the rules of Rocket League because they understand the rules of soccer, more or less. I personally think it's more like hockey, and they have that new game mode now. But what else was it? How about the distribution platform? Rocket League got its boost, I think, from PlayStation Plus. It just became free on PlayStation Plus, right? PS4s are very popular this generation. Then it made its way over to Steam, and it became even more widely distributed. And there's cross-platform matchmaking. So there's matchmaking between PS4 and PC players. So the people who made this game made a very deliberate decision to make it very universally appealing. And so you have to be able to study those things, learn what it is that makes a popular video game, and then anticipate that popularity before it happens. So if you can see the next Rocket League or the next League of Legends, which actually is a much deeper explanation because they came up with a new payment model, but you have to be able to predict these things and then cover the game before it explodes, because then you're part of that growth for the game. And that's ultimately what I'm describing with the entrepreneurialism, is it just requires timing. Anytime a new industry opens up, there's a lot of research to be done and a lot of luck. I keep saying that, I keep reiterating, but you're asking me like, how do you become a successful streamer? I'm trying to explain to you, it's not always within your control. Sometimes there are just things that happen at the right time, and you have, you're just in the middle of a job and you have a lot of time to dedicate to streaming, whatever. It just, some people just get really lucky, and sometimes they deserve it, right? Or sometimes they don't. Who knows? It's not for me to say.
Well, we want to definitely touch more on kind of when you know that you have a good chance of becoming a successful streamer and all of that nearer to the end of this segment. But specifically, we want to talk about what makes really good Heroes content and pick your brain about that.
Sure.
Before we do, we talked a lot about streaming, but maybe not quite as much about that smaller form content, the post-produced type of VOD videos. Do you have any tips on what is the best kind of content for those types of videos, what people should really be looking to produce there?
I mean, as it pertains to Heroes or just in general?
Just in general before we get into Heroes.
Oh, geez. That's like asking me what it is that makes YouTube go round. Well, as it pertains to YouTube or gaming content on YouTube, your video has to be shareable, right? So YouTube is extremely popular. There's 1.5 million, more than that, millions and millions of gaming channels on YouTube. It's one thing to hit SEO and hit that page one result for a search term that begins tomorrow. And it's another thing entirely to make something that is so interesting and so engaging that you can't help but share it with your friend. And usually that's something that's shocking. With gaming, it's something that is just like these infinite odds. Like some of the series we do, like the WTF moments, for example, which we outsource to the Heroes Highlights channels. These guys, they're dedicated to chasing the really unusual and uncommon things that happen in Heroes of the Storm. And they just compile that into a montage, right? These guys have like got the most successful Heroes of the Storm series on YouTube. It's the WTF moments in Heroes of the Storm. And they've just got a big, like 4 or 5 minute short form, something that you can watch, like on the toilet or something like, that's when most on their phone. That's when a lot of people do it, I'm sure. But yeah, it's just short and it's unusual. It's shareable. It's interesting. It's like, oh my God, I've never seen this happen in Heroes of the Storm before. Check this out, dude. Skype link or Twitter link or what have you. Or on a fan site, for example. If a fan site wants to post your video and it's popular, I mean, fan sites and Heroes, just to give you an example, have more promotional power than the front page of BattleNet does, because that's where people go to check out the stuff that's happening within the community, because it's a community-driven website. But yeah, that's been my observations. There is of course ways to build really loyal audiences that just want to see whatever you do, want to do series content, which is more along the Let's Play route, which I think is kind of being phased out at the moment. Right now, the most successful things on YouTube are short form videos that are very shareable.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think I answered your question.
Yeah,
I think it was
you
a
totally
loaded question.
did. Yeah, no, and you made a great segue for us, actually, because like I said, we do want to hear about what's great in Heroes. So you mentioned those kind of very shareable moments, those kind of rare WTF moments, and then you talked a little bit about what makes exciting Let's Play. So let's talk about Heroes as entertainment. Why do you think Heroes of the Storm is interesting to watch at all? Why is it entertaining at all?
Well, I'm not so convinced that it would be if there was no human component. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you're just watching a replay file and it's just 5 players going up against 5 players, it's just like, okay, they're just playing a game. It's really when you start to add in the human element. So you get to see, take competitive scene, for example, you get to see these players on stage and they're getting really worked up about what's happened. They just made a big play and there's an outburst and the casters go wild and the audience interacts. There's all that human energy centered around what's happening in the game. Or you take the more casual scene, right? You can understand somebody's thought patterns and how they express those thoughts in the way that they play, based on in-game movement or missing skill shots, which is a lot of the WTF moments. Comes down to people just choking and getting frustrated. And then there's the conversation that takes place over the game. And for me, that's the most interesting part, and that's what Squadron focuses on, which is everybody who's watching and who is playing knows what Heroes of the Storm is. They know the rules. They've seen it all before. It's the human element that keeps changing. It's, oh my gosh, are we going to win this game? I can feel the energy building right now about this upcoming team fight, and I can hear the things that they're saying, and it's exciting to me. Or it's funny. Something funny just happened, but it's not funny until the human acknowledges it and draws attention and laughs. So it makes it easy for you to laugh with. So for me, it's just the emotions around playing the game that is entertaining to experience, not necessarily the game itself. Though you must do the development team credit as well, as they have engineered the game to be a spectating experience from the ground up. That started with RTS games and the replayer function, the spectator function, and it's made its way over to the MOBA genre. And they're just very entertaining. And more importantly, they're built to be watched.
Yeah, totally.
And in the case of Heroes, particularly from the ground level, like League of Legends with the replayer system or the spectator system, that was just way sloppy Joe. So you couldn't necessarily say that it was built to be watched from the start, but Heroes certainly was. And it was intended to be an esport from the start. So a lot of it is by design as well.
So you make a ton of content about Heroes, obviously. What is it about Heroes that you enjoy making content about it? Right.
So there's a lot of strategy games, right? Like chess is the original strategy game. Heroes of the Storm is very in-depth strategy. Most importantly, it's got teamwork as an element of success on a level that I've never seen before. People get really frustrated when they solo queue in Heroes of the Storm because they can't win the game by themselves. They have to focus they have to focus, and they have to work as a team. And that's going to, be really unattractive for some people because they're not team players. Maybe they don't have the best social skills, or maybe they don't have patience, whatever the case may be. But for me, working with a team is more satisfying. We didn't go to the moon. One man didn't go to the moon. It was a giant group of people that worked as a team to make that happen. And arguably one of the most impressive feats of mankind. And it was done because of teamwork. And so when you win a match of Heroes, you can say, we won as a team. Nobody can take credit for that because no single player could possibly win the match. And to me, that's just very satisfying. And it's a more satisfying social experience as well. I consider myself a social person, and I like to work with people. So if you're an introvert, you're a hermit, you want to go chill in a cabin in the woods, maybe solitaire is the right game for you.
Play StarCraft.
Not here.
Or StarCraft, or, something like that. Heroes of the Storm is very much a team game, and I just like it. I like it for that reason.
That's why I like it too.
Absolutely. Moon landing was a lie. Oh boy. Conspiracy.
I think that it makes victories feel a lot more of a victory too. Because I played League for a long time.
Yeah.
Sometimes we would win and I would still feel like, but man, this one person got all of the kills and I just kind of followed them around.
Right. Yeah, you got carried. Huh?
Yeah, I got carried.
Which is possible, which is part of the game, right?
Yeah. But in Heroes, even when somebody is carrying, if you've got 4 really bad teammates, you're still going to lose. Yeah.
The way you carry in Heroes is by leadership, right? Mm-hmm. It's by making the play calls, even just pings, or just being in the right place at the right time and helping guide your team to the right place and positioning. All these things are team elements. So if you really want to carry a Heroes of the Storm match, it's possible, but you've got to be keeping your team from falling apart and playing the leadership role in a way that leads your team to success. Because without you, they couldn't have done that. So that is carrying, but it's carrying in a social way instead of, a cognitive kind of way or a reflex, Twitch reflex kind of way.
Yeah. I wonder if you would say, because one of the things that I think made Heroes appeal to me more, especially as something to watch, was that the way that they built varied battlegrounds and also the objectives, keeping it fast moving, and the fact that you are in a lot more team fights than maybe a lot of other MOBA style games. The fast pace makes it really interesting and gives a little more I've been around esports a long time, but Heroes makes it easier for me to be like, oh, remember that one moment when blah 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 happened, and be able to talk to my friends about those moments. So for me, that was a big deal. Did you find that interesting about Heroes as well?
Yeah, for me in Heroes, the team fight always began at level 1. You know what I mean? Like in other MOBAs, there's the lane phase, and it doesn't make sense for me to team fight right now because I gotta be CSing up top. I gotta be last hitting for my gold, right? Or I can't fight until I have this item. You know? In Heroes, how often do you hear somebody say that? Oh, I can't team fight until I unlock this talent at level 7.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, dude, you have all your basics. You have everything you need to successfully win a team fight. Peel for me, heal me. The fight begins right away. So although there's a very natural progression in the game where you gradually become more and more powerful, and a mistake leads to a loss a lot more quickly and easier, you've still been fighting as a team ever since the beginning. And of course, there's still the concept of soaking EXP, but there's so many instances, early game objectives at the 2-3 minute mark that require a team fight of sorts. Even if it's not a full-blown 5v5, it's a 2v2 or a 3v3. The example I like is Dragon Shower, my favorite map. I know a lot of people don't like it. You usually got one person mid and the other 4 on top and bottom. So as soon as that shrine is active, there's going to be a 2v2 encounter. So it's kind of like that WoW arena feel. And then, oh no, the wild card, the mid laner's roaming down bottom, it becomes a 3v2, and then quickly a 3v3. And it's just always early game team fighting. And for me, team fighting has always kept me stimulated. It's always been exciting. So exciting. Like a 3v3 to me is so much more exciting than a 1v1 in any kind of game. Except unless it's like a fighting game. There are exceptions. But in games.
3v3 fighting games.
Yeah.
So this fast-paced and this emphasis on teamwork, a lot more teamwork, less about carrying. What can streamers do maybe to take advantage of that in improving their streams, would you say?
I'm sorry, how can streamers use Heroes of the Storm qualities to improve their hero-specific streams?
Yeah.
And I would even bridge to kind of our next question too there, which is, what moment should people start to pick out? Like, can you give some guidance of if I'm streaming and maybe I had this or that great moment, what are the ones I should be looking for to pick out for maybe a short form YouTube video, or what are the ones I should be trying to create while I'm streaming that will make it really exciting?
So let me, this is a load of questions. Let me start with JC. So, okay. Gillyweed, everybody knows your real name. And your question is, what is it about Heroes of the Storm that hero streamers can utilize to enhance the entertainment factor or the draw of their stream? And me personally, like, yeah, it's pretty funny when somebody rages out because they just lost, a rank 1 determining match because of tomfoolery. That can be funny, but you're not really laughing with that person. You're laughing at them. And it's like, haha, he's so salty, he's so pissed off. And epic fail. That can be interesting, but it's not long lasting, right? Mm-hmm. For me, the person who brings the audience back time and time again is the person who's just really resolute and committed to winning. And in the case of Heroes, winning means playing as a team and being positive. So my number one advice to hero streamers would be, it's really easy to get pissed off in this game. It's really easy to take out your anger and your aggression on your allies or even your opponents. But take accountability for your own mistakes more often. And not every game you lose is a negative thing. In fact, usually you're going to improve more when you lose versus when you win. Because you're forced to soak in your loss and acknowledge the mistakes that you made so that you remember those for next time. You won't make those mistakes again, hopefully, and you're more likely to win. And then it becomes a very competitive experience that is truly entertaining to watch. But you can't have true competition without sportsmanship. Unless you're talking about war, which let's not go there. In terms of, deliberate competitive activities, sportsmanship for me is a huge factor. And then there was Anna's question, I'm sorry, can you?
Yeah, it's along very much the same lines, but if people are streaming, what moment should they kind of think about trying to create? And if they do create certain moments, what are the ones that they should be like, oh, I'll go back and I'll highlight that or put that on YouTube or something like that?
Sure. In the case of, creating a highlight reel, I'm not sure that you can force these instances where something amazing happens. Let's take a series that we do, for example, Heroes Unite. It's a series dedicated to two heroes that work really well together and can do some combinations off
Oh,
of one
cool.
another that are impressive and very effective in game. So naturally, when you go into a Heroes Unite, you're thinking, okay, today we're going to do the washing machine, which, you know, I'm not a big fan of washing machine, but you know, it's cool, right? You have the level 20 crater, and then you got the Wandering Keg. It just creates this intense like moment in the match where, wow, that was a washing machine, and it just yielded 2 or 3 kills, or it just won us the game. Holy shit, you know, that was so epic. Put it in the, you know, send that into top 5 plays or put it in the montage or whatever. So you can try to deliberately create those awesome moments just by having a plan and going into it. But as far as the funny ones that are just, you know, the odds of it happening are infinitesimal. They're just really unlikely, really uncommon. I don't think you can force those. And if people do, they're really good in-game actors, which is, you know, I've never heard of that. acting your character into a really uncommon scenario. But yeah, those ones you just have to sift through in mass. So say you do like 40 hours of streaming in a single week. You might have a handful of those that just happen by happenstance, and you got to go back and find them. So that's not easy to do. In fact, that's something we've tried to do and have struggled with. It basically requires a spectator writing down timestamps. It's better to source those kinds of moments from the community because the community is interested in sharing. Reddit's a great place to find those sorts of things.
Well, before we move to the next question, I did want to add something to something that I have learned from streaming heroes that might be beneficial, and I'm sure Anna can totally attest to this too. And that is, if you are streaming by yourself, because of the fast-paced nature of the game and the fact that you team fight quite a bit, it can be difficult to try to keep up with your chat. But there's generally like a longer waiting period, and you can even like delay a bit and catch up with chat and talk to them then while you're waiting for your next game. So that's one thing that could help with that and make sure that you're continuing to be engaged with your chat if you are trying to do the solo thing. But because it is such a team-oriented game, maybe, find some people who you enjoy playing with just by streaming, who happen to be on and playing quite a bit at the same time that you are. And then, eventually you can get on comms and they can hear that aspect of it too. And it does make it a lot easier when you are playing with at least one other person who you enjoy playing with and can talk strategy with while you're streaming. So those would be 2 things that I would add.
Yeah, it's just the way the game is played, man. Like, you can duo queue, you can queue with 3 people. I wouldn't recommend queuing with 4. It usually doesn't end well. But you
get a Nova.
You need to have somebody or a group of people that you play with if you're going to take the game seriously. But more importantly, if you're going to enjoy the game to its fullest, you need to have a group of people that you play with. And I think that's one thing that Blizzard games have done really well, is creating a social network, right? All the BattleNet games are in the same launcher. They're all part of the same network, and you can converse with your friends between games. They say your buddy's playing Hearthstone. Hey, man, you want to play some Heroes? Normally, if it was just me, maybe I wouldn't want to play Heroes today because it's a little stressful. But if it's with my homie, duo queue, I'm going to have a lot more fun playing Heroes. Yeah, I'll hop out of this Hearthstone match and join you. So don't be afraid to make friends. And when you have them, don't be afraid to ask them to play with you. Chances are they're going to have a hell of a lot more fun playing with another person than they would by themselves. It's better for the community too.
Yeah, I think we get that question actually quite a bit, which is, where do I find people to play Heroes with? And I think in a lot of cases the answer is Blizzard will provide those for you. Fan sites, Reddit, all of those, they're there. It just takes that kind of confidence or that bravery to step out and be like, hey, I'd like to play with you. Will you play with me? Even if you don't know somebody. And that's how you make friends. Most of the people in the Heroes community, I didn't know until we were just like, would you like to play Heroes together and see if we like playing together? And if we don't, it's okay. That's all right. JC and I are a great example, actually, because both of us were like, I think I want to play Heroes. Do you want to play Heroes? Okay, let's play Heroes together. And then, we really like each other. Do you want to study together? Sure. Okay. Do you want to do a show? That's how it happens. So you just have to, bravery is the answer to that. You just got to take those first steps, because nobody's going to be like, here is a pre-made group of friends for you. You got to do it yourself.
Yeah.
we have to get into our play session where Hengest is going to play Lunara for us and tell us about a build he likes to play for fun. But the rest of the questions we had centered around kind of being an online personality and the unique joys and challenges that come with that, and kind of the work-life balance that you have to maintain.
Yeah.
That's obviously something that we could talk about for an entire show. But
that's the hard part, to be honest with you, is not losing yourself in everything that you're doing, and making sure that you still have a personal life, and that what you show your personal relationships is not Hengest, you know.
Yeah.
I don't show my girlfriend Hengest. I show that me, you know, before the persona, right? So that's a really difficult thing to do. And yeah, you're right. You could talk for a whole show about that one.
What would you say is the best way to kind of keep that in mind? Because I think it's easy in concept to say, like, okay, my public persona is not the same as my private persona, but it can be hard to maintain that line. What would be your advice?
Yeah. How much time do we have before the community match?
Oh, whatever you need. You take it. I'm just trying to move us toward the end.
Geez. So it's a problem, and it's difficult to overcome, especially at first. And that is, everybody wants to make their hobby their work, right? Some people's hobbies don't have work opportunities. Some people's hobbies don't have a monetary potential. In the case of gaming, in this day and age, it does. Gaming is a huge industry. There's a lot of money in it. But if that's your love, if that's your passion, it then becomes your work. And you have to be able to separate those things. You have to be able to game privately and enjoy that game time without having the persona. Otherwise, you're not going to love gaming anymore, because gaming just became work. So for me, like, I like to play consoles when I'm chilling, you know, by myself, or couch co-op with my niece or with my girlfriend or whoever, you know, something that's just totally separate and done only for the purpose of enjoying your love and your hobby. And then the other part is, all of this is done in computers. The work is done in computers, and the hobbying is done in computers. So then you end up living your life in computers. You sit too much. You don't get exercise. You gravitate towards snacky foods. You don't go outside as much as you should. There's a lot of health factors that you have to consider, and not just physical health, but mental health as well. Mental health has been the most important thing for me to maintain, just to maintain my motivation and my work ethic. Once you work from home, or even work in gaming in general, you don't have regular hours usually. I mean, Anna, maybe you're an exception, but for me, like, I make my own hours. I have a reporting structure in the company, but I do it from home. And so I've got to figure out, when is it work time, when is it relaxation time. And it just requires a great deal of discipline. And even after 5 years, I still don't have it down. Maybe never will, but yeah, it's quite an enigma trying to figure out.
We got the whole thing that you said, so don't worry. Cool. And I think that's really, really valuable advice. The last thing I want to ask you, and JC, unless there's any other questions that you wanted to add after this, the last thing I really wanted to make sure that we did let our viewers know is, what would be, because this is another one of those questions we get all the time, which is, when do I know that my stream or my content creation is ready for me to kind of take the jump and try to do this full time? When's the time to, like, quit the day job and really take the risk?
Yeah. That one, it varies a great deal from person to person, I imagine. I think the most convenient transition would be, I'm losing interest in my day job because I'm so interested in this streaming gig that I want to do, or this YouTubing gig that I want to do. Gradually, your disinterest in your day job results in you having to leave, or God forbid, being let go. And then you're just forced into a downtime where it's like, shit, I've got these savings and I wasn't happy at my old job. Now's the time for me to take the plunge. Hopefully that's how it works out for people, because I think that's the most safe and comfortable way to do the transition. Though I would say, once you're satisfied with the audience size that you have, and you've done the research, and you understand where the money comes from in this activity, and how much of it you're getting, what are your business expenses on top of that, and then just start balancing your budget before you leave your day job, to understand that you do have a positive cash flow and that you have enough that you can at least get by on, maybe hopefully while you have it on top of your savings, and just give it a real shot. Don't walk away from your previous life to try it, and make sure you give it enough time, but make sure your planning is solid. Otherwise, you're not going to have a good experience.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
Gilly, anything else before we move into our play session? I think that sounds like a very inspiring place to leave as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, I totally agree. And if we get any more questions, I'll make sure to watch out for them throughout the game so that we can ask Hengest. If you guys really do have questions at all about streaming, not even just Heroes, but other games or creating content, please, this is definitely your time. Use this man's brain and get his expertise.
It is a beautiful, wrinkly human brain, and you may take advantage of it.
You'll ever say beautiful and wrinkly together unless it's also talking about a pug.
Or a bulldog. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into this segment of the show. That is where our kind of game and strategy segment ends, even though this week was not quite as much game and strategy as it was content and strategy. Let us know what you thought about that. And we are going to move into our play session. Hengist, you are going to play Lunara. What are your general feelings toward Lunara?
I think she's, despite what her difficulty writing in game states, I think she's very difficult to master. Which is what you want in any hero, in my opinion. I wouldn't recommend her for beginners. I think her playstyle is similar to Vala, except less aggressive because she doesn't have the vaults for escape. She has a passive evasion talent, or I would call that just a passive in general. Her mount, she doesn't have a mount, she just moves at increased speed. So your positioning is very, very important. And she's very powerful. I know she's at the bottom of the win rates in quick match, and a lot of people think she's weak as hell. But I say to those people, you need to practice more. Give it at least 10 games before you're comfortable playing this hero, and go from there. See what you think.
Sounds good to me. Well, we will have a build from Hengist. We will put the link in chat so you can kind of follow along with that build. We'll talk about it as we play. I'm going to be observing, so I won't be playing, so I'll be a little bit quiet, but we'll try to answer your questions as well. We're going to take just a few minutes to set up and get our friends in our game, and then we'll be right back after this brief break, so stay tuned. See you soon.